I'm wondering if you could kind of walk us through, in broad strokes, what does the strategy look like if I want to start going after a new role in 2024, like right now? Where do I begin, and what's my next step and next after that?
Well, you are right that it is not a um, one size fits all type scenario. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I enjoy, and I know a lot of our executive coaches and our writers enjoy this too, is that no one person's scenario or situation is the same. Once you get to 20 plus years of experience, statistically speaking, no one could have had the same experience as you on a day-to-day basis. Scientifically impossible. So the question remains, how do you take all that and form it into a value proposition? And how you do that is different for every person. And then what to do with it once you have it is a different strategy for every person. But here's the two major steps. It's really only two steps. And I hate to be so uh to zoom out on that so much, but really everything else after that sort of gets more specific to that person. Number one, you have to know your value proposition. And you're not going to know this like just by analyzing it yourself. That's why executive coaches get involved at all different levels. I mean, sometimes executive coaches work with executives in companies just to do this, to help figure out, what would be the next thing for them.
What is it you always
Um,
say? I'm sorry, you always say this lovely thing that I always remember. So it has to do with looking at the label from,
oh, you can't read the label from the inside of the bottle.
right.
And I got that from a CMO, a chief marketing officer that we actually worked with. Okay. And I told her I would use that. But yeah, that's one thing they teach you in marketing. And that's what she said to me. I've worked in marketing long enough to know you can't read the label from the inside of the bottle. So that's a discovery process on its own. But remember, as an executive, you're no longer typical talent. You are an investment. You're an investment of 6 to 7 figures annually to a company for a return. And so the first thing when you're marketing anything, you take your marketing budget and you go, okay, we're not just going to throw this around and throw stuff up against the walls and see what sticks. You're like, okay, this is what our software does, let's say, and this is what types of companies it works for. You're not going to market like Workday to a 2-person company. So you have to first know what that value proposition is. And then the second part of it, part 2, is getting it communicated to the right people in the right places at the right time in the right manner. And that's where it varies per person. Most people, we start out with a kind of a broad stroke of, if we're going to work on the marketing strategy and getting in the door in the first place, it's either going to be through your resume or it's either going to be through your network. If you're a 7-figure executive, it's probably not going to be through a job posting. I mean, statistically, they say 1% of 7-figure executives get a job through job posting, but I've never actually seen a 7-figure job posting, so I don't know where that comes from. But mostly it happens through network. And so we're going to say, okay, well, how does this value proposition need to get communicated to the resume screener? And how does it need to get communicated to the network? And within network, it's only 2 ways you can get communicated, either in the conversation that you have, standing in line with somebody at Starbucks, or something you write. So either way, you have to be proficient at communicating it verbally and in writing. Okay. Then underneath the network column, there's only 3 ways you're going to get a conversation to happen. It's either going to be a chance meeting, inbound, meaning they found you on LinkedIn or some other venue. I have run into a few scenarios where someone was speaking at an event and the company said, we want to recruit that person, so whether that's chance meeting or inbound, didn't figure that out. And then there's outbound, which means that instead of just going out there and dialing a while on your network, what you want to do is say, okay, if this is my value proposition, let's start with the research, just like you would do with any other marketing budget. And say, let's start with the research on who the customer is and where this customer is and who I should be talking to and what strategy do I have for each person. It's not a spam campaign, never spam, but how am I going to get a conversation with this person versus that person? Oh, look, I'm connected to that person. And then there's a strategy for each person on your target list that's going to vary depending on who you are and what you do and how much your brand is out there. And that's kind of what we sort of work with people hand in hand on that. But really it just boils down to one, I think I said one and two, figure out your value proposition first, and then two, make sure it's getting communicated to the right people, the right place, the right time, in the right manner.